Walter,
Martin.
did you know that the New World Order is implemented?
Well, it seems from the title, Davos, World Economic Forum, Kings and Merchants implemented the New World Order. Are you trying to imply that it's already implemented?
The missing link surfaces at last. New video of Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, connecting the dots between revolution in the Catholic Church 60 years ago and the Great Reset. Why did they get rid of Pope Benedict and install Jose Mario Bergoglio to the chair of St. Peter? And what's the connection between the global lockdowns of today and a bizarre middle-of-the-night ceremony that took place some 55 years ago, deep in the catacombs beneath the streets of Rome?
92-year-old Father Luigi Battazzi is the last known survivor of a secret pact that experts say may have influenced Pope Francis. Signed 50 years ago at the time of Vatican II by Catholic bishops in this underground church in Rome. Called the Pact of the Catacombs, it vowed to create a poor church for the poor, the same church Pope Francis says he wants today.
I always say that Pope Francis is the new Catacombs Pact.
And they decide, for example, to refuse, for example, to be called Eminency, Monsignor, so they wanted to be called like Father. And we can say, for example, that they decide to refuse all the insignia.
Okay.
And when I say insignia, it means
like
the
cross, the rings.
Yeah, not the yeah.
This included, obviously, doing away with the papal tiara, or the crown, the symbol of the Pope's ruling authority, which has been there for 1,000 years. From 1143, in fact, to 1963, the papal tiara was solemnly placed on the Pope's head during the papal coronation. Pope Paul VI was crowned Pope. He wasn't inaugurated, he was crowned. And they got rid of that institution of the monarchy at every level in the Catholic confessional states for the 100 years before that. And finally, they got rid of the idea of crowning the Pope. He no longer was a monarch. He was more like a president, which is exactly where they wanted it. So in 1964, Pope Paul VI renounces that crown, and the popes have never been crowned since. And after his mass, we're talking about Francis now, after his massive inauguration in 2013, he said that he wanted a poor church for the poor people. You remember this?
Come vorrei una chiesa povera e per I poveri.
Quote, "We will do our utmost so that those responsible for our government and for our public services make and put into practice laws, structures, and social institutions required by justice and charity, equality in the harmonic and holistic development of all men and women, and by this means bring about the advent of another and new social order," end quote. Also known as the New World Order. Bishop Helder Camara, or Camara, to anglicize it. The self-identified socialist archbishop from Brazil, whom Francis would declare a servant of God in 2015. He is the role model of one Jorge Mario Bergoglio. It was Archbishop Camara who on November 16th, 1965, led 42 powerful council fathers, bishops, down into the catacombs to sign the Catacombs Pact. There's a bit more on that.
They also vowed to put pressure on international organizations to help change the economic structures which they said exploit the poor. These are all points that are remarkably similar to Pope Francis's agenda for the church today.
He's got one more point on his resume. He was a major influence on a young Klaus Schwab.
I give you one example which for me was probably a crucial moment in my life. I traveled for the first time to Brazil. I met a priest who was known at that time as the priest of the poor people. His name was Don Elder Camara. And he brought me to the favelas of Recife, and I was so shocked. And I said, I have to invite this bishop to Davos to tell the people what poverty is. So I invited him to the annual meeting in Davos. But then when I came back in Switzerland, I found out that actually he was forbidden at that time to speak in Switzerland because he was considered to be a communist. And I said, this is for me a test. But then I noticed that many companies told me, if you invite this person who is so much against business, we will not come to Davos anymore. And that's where I had to stand to my values, even at the risk that I would have to give up the World Economic Forum.
Wow.
But it went very well. I have to say, the audience in Davos listened to him.
They also vowed to put pressure on international organizations to help change the economic structures which they said exploit the poor. These are all points that are remarkably similar to Pope Francis's agenda for the Church today.
It's the same revolution. It's the same players, in fact. The Great Reset was indeed hatched in a catacomb beneath the streets of Rome at the close of the Second Vatican Council in 1965. And it just took a while to get to the point politically where it is now. But it's the same movement.
Martin, it actually comes from a little bit earlier. Rerum Novarum. Catholic social doctrine. The world has to be restructured. So what we've seen now is that the World Economic Forum is nothing other than the organization that is to drive the papal agenda. That's it. And it is part of the healing of the wound. Up until that time of Vatican II, the papacy and the rest of the religious world, Protestantism in particular, were divided. The papacy was seen as the Antichrist, had been identified by the reformers. That picture had to change. And therefore she took the shape of a chameleon, changed her colors, and went underground into the catacombs and made this so-called pact, which is actually part of the plan a long time ago, because the devil is not divided against himself. So this Antichrist system had to popularize itself to the world and throw off the old image that it had. So this ruling power, this Monsignor, this ultramontanist, had to be seen as a man of the people and no longer as the ruling power that ruled over the world with tyranny in the past. So it changed its approach. But underneath, it is still the venom of the serpent that is working. Davos, the World Economic Forum, is nothing other than the plan of the papacy to receive its power back.
Yes.
And the world will give their power unto the beast. So Martin, it is part of her policy to assume the character which will best accomplish her purpose. But beneath the variable appearance of the chameleon, she conceals the invariable venom of the serpent. She is Antichrist today, she was it in the past, and she will go to perdition. And those that align themselves, the Protestants, the beast and the false prophet, will be thrown into the lake of fire. Martin, do you want to end up in the lake of fire?
I certainly don't, but it's a sad state that our own people that have this book and all these books, the Spirit of Prophecy books, and you have the Bible, that this book gives you confirmation about this prophecy, will turn around and say, no.
All right, now let's just take another point. Once the world gives the power unto the beast, that means the beast rules again. She will be like she was in the Middle Ages. Do we see that she wants to persecute and control?
Or you must just put it in your mind, it's now a Fitbit. And now your mind is doing something it's not supposed to, what is going to happen to you? You're going to get slapped over the fingers.
You're going to get persecuted.
Yeah.
So let's get the message out. Do not accept the mark of the beast. Do not follow the system. It is demonic. It is from the pits of hell. But the kingdom of God will not be shaken, because the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Take your stand on the side of the Lord and keep the commandments of God. Hold to the testimony of Jesus and renounce this system which is from another source.